How do different stakeholders in a conflict perceive peace? Research provides lessons from Israel. And this was all about kind of the lay theories of peace. And so the authors hypothesized that lay theories of peace, one, depend on whether one belongs to the high power or low power party. Associating peace with structural peace will be more prevalent among low power versus high power group members, whereas associating peace with positive peace will be more prevalent among high power compared to low power group members. And the second thing is that the lay theories of peace explain citizens' fundamental approaches to conflict resolution and across societies, and that the stronger the association of peace with positive peace or structural peace compared to negative peace, the stronger the wish to share rather than divide the land. And so this is kind of, as you can probably guess by the hypotheses there, it's kind of the kind of the authors of this paper define lay theories of peace as, you have positive peace, negative peace, and structural peace, which is more focused on justice and equality. And the methods that they used to conduct the study was they used data from 500 Palestinians living in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and 500 Jewish Israelis residing in Israel. And they assessed these two parameters, associations of peace and preference for state solutions. In the associations of peace category, the respondents rated on a Likert scale the extent to which they associated the following words and terms with the general concept of peace. And these are the words: justice, partnership, no war, equality, no bloodshed, and harmony. And then for preference for state solutions, these participants were asked to rate on a scale from 1 to 6 how much they wished for an agreement respected by both sides that will result in one state shared by Palestinians and Jews with equal rights, and how much they wished for an agreement respected by both sides that will result in two states, one for the Palestinians and one for the Jews. And the results of this were that relative to Jewish Israelis, Palestinians were less prone to associate peace with positive peace and more prone to associate peace with structural peace in regards to justice and equality. And then by order of prevalence, the lay theories of peace among members of lower power group include negative first, then structural, and then positive. And then among the high power group, the order is first negative, then positive, then structural. And then for the second hypothesis, the authors concluded that associating peace with positive peace more than negative peace predicts higher wishes for one unified state. And this holds true in the case of structural peace. When justice and equality are given importance, participants are more likely to want to share resources and space. And Anupriya kind of related this to working on structural justice in the workplace. And the authors found that low power groups' likelihood of believing, the one state theory was higher if they believed in structural peace. This shows that if those who have been disadvantaged are offered justice and equality rather than performative peace without any actual benefits, then they're more likely to want to share resources and coexist in the same space as the high power group. So in the workplace, this means that employees who have felt that they were wronged or disadvantaged need to be offered tangible support that helps them feel equal and important in order for the workplace to retain them. Otherwise, if they're not offered dignified solutions, they can be more likely to quit and join other firms.
How are they defining negative and positive peace in this paper? Do you know?
I think it was my understanding kind of the traditional definitions, like negative peace being, the lack of
direct violence.
Yeah, just the lack of violence.
Yeah.
Positive peace is like the absence of structural violence, direct violence, and cultural violence. So
is that how they defined it in this one?
I don't know. I can check, but they said they related the concept of positive negative peace being this long big part of conflict literature. So I imagine they're using the general traditional definitions.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting too that they put in the. I've actually never heard the term like structural peace, because I get like positive peace encompasses structural.
Right. So that's I'm wondering why.
In addition to the attitudes and behavior, such as cultural violence, you know what I mean? So my understanding would be that the cultural violence part is encompassed in positive peace. meaning we don't, so in the workplace, like we have equitable like policies and procedures. No one is, threatening me physically, right? And also, I don't believe that I'm comfortable to. It's like the inclusion part, right? That's what I would think of. Like I am comfortable to be who I am at work, and I don't fear going to my boss because they're a higher rank, or with feedback or something like that. Like that's how I would take the positive piece into the workplace, because it's like the cultural, the norm, the behaviors, and like the attitudes, along with the structure, along with the direct violence or lack of direct violence.
Yeah, I wonder if that's how they meant. I mean, this reminds me of like if you've got two people that are coworkers that are having some trouble, and one is the supervisor and one is the direct report. It seems like so wait, let's see here. With positive piece, more negative piece produces. Okay, so positive piece, yeah. So like if their conception of peace is more positively oriented, including those different elements like structural and maybe cultural, then they're more apt to like want to continue working together. Whereas I've seen like in some cases where they just get to the point where like we don't need to work together anymore. Like you go your way and take your team, and I'll do this over here, and we don't need to like interact, and we can still like coexist in the workplace, which usually is not the case. And usually people are, especially on the leadership team, are like, no, you have to interact, you have to work together, you can't just silo yourself off from each other. But it seems like maybe changing their conceptions of peace and what that means and what that looks like maybe will help them figure out, okay, we can be on the same team and work together, rather than just like give up all hope, let's just separate and go our separate ways and like work in the same space but not interact. Yeah, that's sort of what this reminded me of.
Yeah, and I'm just like reading the key takeaway for in the workplace too. It's like these. So if one individual feels wronged, rather than just adhere to them and like make it a let's resolve this, me being the boss and you being the the staff member who feels wronged due to something, rather than it being just that type of fix, it should be a larger like team fix kind of thing.
Almost like if someone is feeling, whether or not they actually are being disadvantaged or marginalized in some way, if they're just perceiving it that way, there's probably also a perception that the structure, the system of the organization is allowing for this to go on.
Yeah.
And so that needs to be
attacked
too. Right. So that either the structure or at least the perception of the structure or both need to be altered in some way if we're going to move that person into a place of peace.
Yeah, and get out of that like cyclical nature of conflict when you just fix the issue at hand versus the structural.
Yeah. Well, because imagine if you're in a workplace and you've got, a supervisor who's, they've obviously got more power than you, and they're treating you a certain way, and you don't like how they're treated, and you kind of speak up here and there, but you don't really feel safe to speak up, and there's nothing being happening. Like that builds resentment, not just about the person, but about the system. Because now it's like no one's doing anything, no one's listening to me, no one cares. Like it's like the whole thing is messed up, not just this person.
I was interested to see the kind of the prevalence of the lay theories of peace among the members of low power versus high power. And really the only difference is that structural seems to be more prevalent for low power groups versus high power, which I think makes sense for the most part. Like I would imagine that the low power group is the one kind of on the end of maybe not facing more inequality, maybe discrimination from a structural standpoint, or from, I guess in this case it would just be violence and I guess I don't know. I think but I just think it for me it makes sense. It kind of fits that this low power group would be more concerned with structural and then positive after, because if they're kind of getting the front of, you know, if they're getting hurt the most out of it. Oh, Jeremy left.
Oh, yeah. I think this is interesting too. And at first, when you first were reading through it, I thought like, that's like, I don't know. I can't yet see the reasoning behind it. But as you were just talking, I guess it's like those that are in the lower power group that are feeling more marginalized and, you know, fear for safety, right, and well-being, they're less likely to be thinking about the attitudes of the other. Like you know what I mean? They're not thinking like, what does that person think of me? What does that person, you know, they're just thinking, I mean, obviously both say negative piece first, but the structural, even though positive piece, again, like in my definition, like what I've learned of that term, it's still incorporating structural piece, but they're probably just focused on, well, we are the lower power group. We are being controlled in this structure of two-party state, whatever you want to call it, right? And so they're focused on, like, they're hypersensitive and very understandably so. So they're focused on those things. Whereas like the higher power group, Jewish Israelis, they are probably more, they're not necessarily fearing for their safety as the lower power group. So they're able to use their thinking brain, right? And like, and be aware of the attitudes and the cultural violence that, which is why maybe they put positive second. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
What are the instruments? Because I'm wondering if the instruments that they use can give us some insight as to how they define these.
I'm looking at the original study now.
Because it's, and like when I think of positive peace, it's like, like attitudes, like we're gonna be friends. They're probably not like, I want to be friends with the other right now. I just want to be in a safe environment. Yeah,
the positive piece is the way that they defined it was just relationships characterized by friendship, solidarity, harmony, that kind of very basic kind of understanding.
So they gave them these different these different scales, and they said, where do you associate peace with? And then when they said the absence of violence, the absence, like that kind of stuff, that's more negative. And then when they said friendship, this and that, that's more positive. And then there also was some structural scale in there.
Yeah, and these are the words that Anapriya included. There's some like justice, partnership. I'm guessing partnership would be a positive peace word. No war, negative peace. Equality, probably structural. Harmony would be positive. Well,
interesting. So they just use those words versus saying like, here's the definition and then ask it. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, we can move on to the next.
I wonder how, like, if you were to do a study like this in the workplace, if that's how people perceive their coworkers, like, do I want to have positive peace, or is it more of just like the negative and then the structural? Like, do you really want to be friends with your coworkers? Or I wonder, and that could say a lot about the company culture, right?
Right.
Yeah, that would be actually an interesting thing to ask the companies, like how people perceive peace here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting. And you could frame it by workplace conflict. Like, I don't know, a negative piece would be kind of like, I guess, preventing conflict. I don't know.
Or like
the absence of conflict. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the absence of conflict, right? That doesn't exist. But saying like, oh, you don't have full out arguments with the IT department, or you don't, with this or your colleagues, like arguments, like actual events where it's like, that's what I would think would be the negative.
Yeah.
If that didn't exist, that would be negative peace.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You can't. I imagine. I mean, I feel like a lot of people think that conflict is you can avoid it, but so I
think
they would be aware of that.
Probably like a lay version of it. If you said what's peace, like probably a lot of people that aren't in that world would say it's the absence of conflict. Something like that.
Right.
That's why I love Jeremy, the quote that you use, the Gandhi quote in trainings. Yeah. It's like, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with it, or the ability to something like that.
Yeah.
It's good.
No such thing as no conflict.
No, it doesn't exist. Like we're always going, we're never going to like completely want the exact same thing as someone else, and the way of getting it being the exact same as someone else. Like that just doesn't exist. We're unique individuals and we do things differently, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and there's conflict even within us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the path to growth